morning, class. How's everybody doing today? It is Dr. Pam Turner, and we are in our groups class. This is chapter 3. Chapter 3 looks at group dynamics and leadership. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you guys had a nice weekend. It was a long holiday weekend. So let's get started. So again, this is chapter 3 of groups, and this is group dynamic and leadership. So of course, we're going to look at some major things today, describing the 5 major approaches to leadership. We're going to look at effective leadership roles and functions. And as I always tell you, these are things that will definitely be on your licensure test in the future. So be sure that you're studying these things. And I don't always suggest that you keep books, but definitely keep these recordings as you're going through school and looking at what you will be prepared for with your licensure. So then, the different approaches to leadership. One of the things that I always say is what makes an excellent counselor, social worker, is you bring in who you are. So while there are different styles of leadership, the way that I lead group will always be different than the way that other people lead group. So from the hour of birth, some are marked for subjugation, others command. Those traits are born for leadership. If you go back and you look at Adlerian theory of the birth order, I'm a firstborn. So that firstborn would say, I'm a leader, right? However, that has nothing to do with the styles we're learning today. Okay. So then, if you are that charismatic leader, most people think of charismatic leaders as maybe Jim Jones and the Purple Kool-Aid. If you're not old enough to remember that, go look it up, okay? So the charismatic leader, in large organizations, there are several types of leaders, the president, the vice president, using their position. The charismatic leader leads by having charisma. That is, there's something about them that people are drawn to them. The halo effect, that would be a charismatic leader. There's something about them that draws people. So, when looking at those styles, the authoritarian leader. The authoritarian leader is the dictatorship style. So the dictatorship style tells you exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And in the group role, there's definitely places for that. If you are in a group where it's court order, or you only have 6 sessions, or you have to get something done during that period, we do need to be authoritarian. Authoritarian leadership is generally effective and is generally efficient and decisive. However, one of the hazards, the group members may respond out of necessity and not because they're committed to group. However, when I'm using that style, it really is because I need to. So we talked about the stages of group, right? But in this one, I need to get to the stage quickly. So as opposed to waiting for the process to happen, the product is what we're looking for. Those would be my Machiavellian leaders, right? We look at Stalin, Hitler, Saddam Hussein, people who are definitely ruled by authority. Okay. Democratic leaders, on the other hand, democratic, and it's not Democratic versus Republican. This is not a political stance. So democratic leaders are people that have say-so, right? So we're going to vote on it, or we're going to see how the rest of the group wants to do it. Democratic leaders seek the maximum involvement and participation in every member in all decisions affecting the group and attempt to spread responsibility rather than concentrate on it. So the democratic leader is not trying to be in charge. They're really just trying to make sure that everybody participates in group, that we all have that buy-in, and definitely having that buy-in is what really matters to get those processes done. And of course, those laissez-faire leaders. I used to always say it was fairly lazy, and it is, but it's not a bad leadership style. If you're working in an area where everyone is doing their job, If every group member, if everyone in your agency is doing their job, then the leadership style can be laid back, right? Easygoing. So I don't need to be on top of your head all the time, or my thumb on your head all the time, telling you exactly what to do. The laissez-faire leader trusts that my members are going to show up, they're going to do what they're supposed to do, and if there's a problem, then I'm here. And laissez-faire leaders are capable of stepping up. So if there's a problem in the group or a problem in the classroom or wherever that leadership style is going on, it's not that the laissez-faire can't step up. They can, and they will. However, the goal is that the leadership style is not necessary because the groups are functioning pretty well. Okay. So again, some different leadership styles. Whenever I think of servant leadership, I always think of scripture in the Bible, that Jesus was a servant leader. So a servant leader is someone who looks to the needs of the group. The servant leader is working with members to solve problems and ask himself, how can I help? The servant leader places the main focus on the members as he or she believes the content and the motivated members are the best way to get things done. So a servant leader is going to lead, but also be involved. I'm not sitting back saying, you do this, you do that, you do this. I'm in there in the trenches with my group members. Okay. Some of the leadership roles that you'll see in the group. Okay. So all groups, whether organized for therapeutic reasons, problem solving, or other purposes, rely on members performing tasks, roles, and group maintenance. So when we're looking at the task roles or the group roles, these are assigned. These are spots or roles that people kind of take part of or become part of. So first of all, it's initiating, right? So proposing task of goals, getting things started. Okay, so let's get this group started, or next week, let's do this. Or did we discuss this last time? That's my initiator. My information of opinion seeking, requests facts, seeks relevant information, questions, or concerns. Clarifying is one of those active listening skills, whether you see it in the group or individual, it doesn't really matter. Clarifying is making sure that you understand. Interpreting or reflecting ideas and suggestions, clarifying conclusions, indicating alternatives. It's always okay to clarify in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a group session. A client says this and I don't understand, or I think what they're saying. It's really okay to go back and clarify. And then, of course, summarization, that's the summary. It's always at the end. So at the beginning, maybe, we're talking about what we're going to discuss today based on last week, or at the end of the conversation. Summarization, putting together related ideas, restating suggestions after the group has discussed them, offering a decision or conclusion for the group. So summarization, summarizing, of course, is the end. Consensus testing. Hello, I see someone joined us today. Consensus testing is checking with the group to see how much agreement has been reached. So consensus taking is, wow, are we all good on this? Are we all ready to go? Now those are some of my task roles. Task roles are getting jobs done, task. My maintenance roles, of course, is maintaining the stability of group, maintaining the routine of group. So encouraging, being friendly and warm and responsive. Harmonizing, harmony. So harmonizing is kind of get back everybody on the same page. So Bob, I hear that you disagree with what Bill is saying, but can you at least understand what Bill is saying? I'm trying to create harmony in the group. I'm not trying to ignore the content or the fact that people may not agree, but can we do it in a way that we can all live with? Okay. And then, of course, expressing group feelings, fostering communication, compromising. How are you? I'm group 3 on group dynamic leadership. Not sure what page it is in your book. Okay. So a task leader emerges in many groups because he or she has the best ideas and does the most to guide discussions. Because this person concentrates on a task and generally plays an aggressive role in moving the group toward their goal, and a task group really is, that's their genius, to get toward the goal. What is our plan? A second leader may emerge, a social emotional specialist who also concentrates as the group harmony. Okay, so in a task group, several members can take on the roles. And just because I was in this role last week doesn't mean that I'm in this role this week. And it really isn't about whether or not, again, they're not assigned roles. There are some roles that we play, usually based on our own personality, to help the group facilitate, to help it get started. Okay. Hershey and Blanchard have developed a situational theory of leadership. It points out when leaders focus on task behaviors or maintenance or both, in essence, the theory asserts that members have low maturity in terms of accomplishing a specific task. The leader should engage in high task behavior and low maintenance. So that's telling the group members, right? So if we've got a task group that we're getting started, and again, a task group is something that has to be done. You are ordered for parenting classes. You have to be here. You're on the school PTA, and you have to figure out how to spend the money. Those are task groups. You specifically have something that has to be done in a set period of time. So Hershey and Blanchard refer to this as telling. The leader's behavior is most effective when they tell them what to do. And this is in the beginning of a task group where it has low involvement. Okay? For moderately mature members, the leader should engage in high task behaviors and high maintenance. So if you are moderately mature, and that means like grown up age, but ready to share and ready to be in a part of the group, then you're really looking at more of a high task behavior, but also a high maintenance, right? The maintenance roles are the harmonizing, the people that keep it together. The combination of the behaviors is known as selling. The leader should not only provide clear direction about role and task responsibilities, but use a maintenance behavior to get the members to buy into the leadership, right? So again, those harmonizing roles, the compromiser, the information giver, all of those are going to use to get people to have buy-in into this task-based group. Okay. Other roles. So of the designed group leader, the designated group leader has a special obligation to assume or to assess others in assuming timely and appropriate and maintenance roles. Each leader is responsible for a variety of functions. However, there are other members or different stages of group. A leader may be required to assume some of the other group roles. An executive, like I've got to get things done. A policymaker, establishing the goals and policies, the planner, the expert, external group representation. And that means that I speak for the group, right? Or I'm trying to get something done for the group. I always think of that external group representative. That's kind of like jury. If you've ever been on a jury and you are sequestered and the judge asks how you all plead, there's a head, right? There's someone in charge. One of the jury members stands up to do that. So he's one that's going to kind of share with the judge what the jury has agreed on. A controller of internal relationships, again, that just means controlling what happens inside the group. The exemplar, that's the model, setting an example. Ideologist, the ideology, how perfect I think groups should be. So power and influence. As counselors and social workers, we definitely have power and influence nearly by our title, right? So if I'm running a group, I'm looking at the power and influence that's happening in the group. Although the use of power in human interactions is viewed negatively, in fact, a normal part of relationships because people are frequently influencing and being influenced. Okay, I think now there are people who are social media influencers. That's a whole term that I've tried to understand. The term power and influence can be interchangeable in this book. Okay, power and influence are not always the same, but for this one, they're going to be the same. And I also think in the profession, that is also the same. If I have power, then I can influence you. Task functions move the group forward. Maintenance functions improve the social and emotional. We discussed that in the last point. So task roles get us on our task, get us going. Our maintenance roles works on the inside of the group, right? Making sure that we maintain routine, harmony, talking to each other, summarizing, things like that. In making decisions, group members present their views and opinions in an effort to influence group members. For example, some members attempt to incorporate their personal goals or the group's goals or to promote the strategies for action that they want implemented. And again, I'm going to use the jury situation. So a jury is, again, that's a task group, right? You've heard the closing arguments, and your goal is to decide whether or not this person is guilty or innocent. So while you're in this group, in this task group, there are many times that the leader or someone who's in the group will try to influence you to vote their way. You're trying to prove whether he's innocent or guilty. Okay? He may not be the head jury person, but he may be just a member of the jury that has got some power or some perceived power. He's trying to influence you, or she's trying to influence you to vote the same way they are. Members influence each other. Members influence each other to commit their time and resources to the group. Controversies are usually settled during mutual influence as the members seek acceptable compromise or solutions. Okay? So again, what we're looking at is then the controversies are usually settled through mutual influence. And again, in a jury, usually at some point you come together to come up with a solution. Every group member has a need to control what happens in a group because people join group to attain personal goals. So I'm in a group because either I have to be or I want to be. So we all have some sort of control. Again, in that jewelry room, right, there's 12 of us sitting there, and the goal is that we want to make sure our opinion is heard, or these are my thoughts. So of course, we all have some sort of power in that situation. When group members are cooperating, power is asserted in the same direction. Okay, so if we're all on the same page, we're good, right? One second. However, when members have competitive or incompatible goals, for example, Republican and Democratic, innocent or guilty, right? Then this is always going to be competing with each other, and then they really often clash. Okay, but in the real world, that's what happens, right? The word hetero and homogeneous, in a group that's heterogeneous, that means they're all different. We have different thoughts, beliefs, skin colors, dialects, or a homogeneous group where everybody believes the same. In a homogeneous group, things do get done quicker, but in a heterogeneous group, this is where we're going to see those differences. Group members in conflict often sometimes result to manipulation. That is, they influence others for their own purpose or profit. If group members feel coerced by threats or discover they're manipulated in other ways, they usually act with anger, distrust, resentment, and retaliation. And again, I just see this playing out in the behind the jury, right? and she wants to go home and see her kids, and she wants to get this over, and she's kind of talking to the only other lady in the room, trying to influence her. I wish I could remember the name of the movie. There was a movie that the mother was called, and she really had no desire to go back home. So she wasn't going to agree with anybody because she was really in loving being like sequestered. I can't remember the name of the movie, but she was like, hey, whatever. So she had some ulterior motives there, but her goal was to just stay there as long as possible. She liked the TV, and she liked the meals, and she liked not having to take care of her kids. Group members in conflict, again, resort to manipulation. An effective group member is skilled in influencing others in a positive way. The amount of power a member has depending on how valuable his or her resources are. So in a group setting, in the goal setting, the goal is that we definitely want to get on the same page most of the time. However, what we're looking at is we're going to do it in a positive way, right? I'm going to try to prove my point to you. We're going to discuss why I think he's guilty, or what the lawyer told us, or maybe this couldn't be true. So I'm not trying to exert any power over you. I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. The amount of power a member has depends on how valuable his or her resources are. Well, if a member has a vital resource that's available to others, the member will have less power. Interestingly, it's not a person's actual resource that determines power. It's the perception of the group members. It's possible to have vital resources but little power if the resources are ignored or unknown. So it is not the fact that I actually have power over you, it's the perception that I have power over you. That a vital resource, I have something that this group needs, something that I believe I can bring to this group. So that's where I get the influence, but so maybe I don't really have anything. It's actually just the image that looks like, or the perception that looks like I have power. Okay, so these are the 5 power bases in group. And again, I always say, these are the ones that are on the licensure test, whether you're taking it now or in a few years. Remember these terms? Okay, so the reward power includes anything that, includes things such as promotion, pay increases, day off, right? I'll get you, if you'll do this, I'll do this. I'm giving you something to try to influence you to be on my side. So whether it's a group or actually an office setting or any kind of setting, right? So that has to do with my reward power. Coercive power means I'm doing something, I'm coercing you to get you to be on my side. But a gun to my head would be kind of coercing me. It'd be illegal as well, but that would be it. The ability to fire a worker who falls below the level of production is a common example of the coercive power. So again, I've got power over you, so I can get you to vote my way, think my way, any of those things. Coercive power may be exacerbated by leading both A and B to distrust each other and to retaliate against each other. If you guys have ever watched like Survivor or any of those shows where everybody lives in the house together, that's what we see sometimes, these types of power, right? Because we're all in those situations, people are trying to win. They're trying to stay on the island or stay in the house. So they may do that reward power, that coercive power. So I'm telling A something that, did you know that B did this? If I get A and B fighting, then they're not going to be coercive. So together, they might then come on my side, but at least they're not a group. Legitimate power is the one who actually has the power. So it's based on internalized values or norms in the most complex of the 5 power bases. Legitimate power is based on the perception by B, the people, that A has a legitimate right to describe the constitutions or the rules. Okay, so Legitimate power is inherent in a formal organization and generally predetermined by a relationship. So, for example, in an office, in a work setting, the person that has legitimate power is my boss, right? He's got legitimate power. However, the book is suggesting that there also can be legitimate power based on perception again. Have you ever been in a setting, a group setting, where someone just kind of steps up and tells everybody what to do? You're like, who the heck are you? Right? So in that moment, the other members believe he's legitimate power. Cultural values constitute one common basis for legitimate power, includes age, caste, and physical appearance for determining the power. For example, in some cultures, the aged are highly respected and granted for the right to prescribe behavior for others. The legitimate power in an informal organization is generally determined by the relationship. A third basis for legitimate power is like an election. Okay, so I can be the legitimate power, I can appear to be the legitimate power, or I can stand up and choose to be legitimate power. Referent power, that's the power I have because I know somebody, we have a relationship together. Many times, referent power in an office setting is, do you know that the boss is my cousin's girlfriend? Or I go to lunch with the boss, or we go to the same church together. Okay, so it's because we have a relationship that I think I have some power. Referent power occurs when an individual, A, influences B as a result of the identification. Identification in this context means the feeling of oneness with A. So B feels like they have power because of the relationship they have with A, which the book I think is a little more confusing. So the referent power is the power that I have because I have a relationship with the person who really has power. We grew up together. We served on, our kids were in the same band or the same something together. So we have a relationship. A relationship most often that has nothing to do with this situation, but because of that relationship, I feel like I have power. Okay? So in ambiguous terms, B is to adopt the thoughts, beliefs, and the values of the individual in which B identifies. Okay, so then that referent power means I'm going to start hanging out, sounding like, behaving with the people that I think have the power. The expert power, that is the person who really is the expert. So I always say in an office setting or a group setting, so there can be the legitimate power, it can be the boss, or it can be the group leader. But the expert power is something who is an expert in that matter. So let's say if I'm working for an agency, and in this group setting, someone knows how to write grants, right? So they are not legitimate, they are not referent, but they're the expert power. We need them. We need them. And think about on the jury. So maybe there's someone who's been on the jury before and they're an expert on how the process works, right? So the jury foreman might be the legitimate power, okay? But the person who says, hey, what do we do next? Or we need to call the bailiff and ask for lunch, that person would be the expert because they're bringing something to the table that no one else has. So accepting a physician's advice in a medical matter is a common example of expert influence, right? Because the doctor said so, because someone else told me so. That's expert influence. So in a group setting, right? Let's go back to Survivor, right? Where this group, we're trying to vote everybody else off the island. So you'll see that The one who's got the really good, he's good at catching fish, or he's really good about building the fires. We want to keep him around, right? We like him because he brings us something to the table. He's got expert power. So unequal power. Okay, and again, the goal is in any group setting, we should all have input, we should all have say-so. The effectiveness of group is improved when power is based on expertise, competence, and relatively equal among group members. Members are more committed to implementing decisions when they feel they have had fair say in making decisions. We all like to have input. Nobody wants to be told what to do, right? We're on this group, we're on the island, we're in the group setting. Don't tell me what to do. We're all equal adults in this room. We just don't like being told what to do. If a group is dominated by a few powerful members, the low power members are less likely to feel committed. It's them up there. You didn't ask me what I think. The low power members feel they'll be manipulated and are reluctant to share their thoughts completely with the high power members. I also think of a classroom. Remember back in the day when the classroom was full and everybody sat down? There are people who would always, who are more talkative, who are trying to get the teacher's attention, who want to be more engaged in the conversation. Those sometimes are my high power members, right? And I've got some people that are usually sitting in the back, and those are my low power members. And again, not a role they've chosen, really based on their personality sometimes. So some of my low power members won't say anything, even if they're right, because the high power members are engaged, and many times the low power members feel intimidated. So in order for this to be a fair process and for me to make sure everybody is learning or being taught on the same level, I try to include the low power members. The low power members fear they'll be manipulated or reluctant to share their thoughts completely. The high power members believe that they're not going to disagree with the high power members. Okay? They're apt to receive fewer rewards and may be easily coerced, right? So I've seen it in the classroom where we're trying to divide up members, we're trying to make a decision, and the low power members often, again, in the back in the corner, don't say anything. And my higher power members are going, come on, Jim, you want to do this, you want to do that, come on. So many times they're afraid to say no. That's also referred to as groupthink, right? We're trying to get those people to come in and to buy into what we're doing. So that's a groupthink process. Power based on authority or popularity can dramatically reduce the problem-solving capacity of the group. When the task requires expertise and competence, high-power people generally believe the low-power people really do like them because they see them as an expert or benevolent. They generally believe the low-power people communicate honestly with them and don't hide any valuable information. So the people with the high power, perceived high power, right? They're trying to run the group, the classroom, the island, the jewelry room, wherever your group setting is. So the high-powered people, they really believe that I'm so great. All of those people are there like me. They just listen to me because I'm the expert and I'm amazing. And they assume that many of the low-power people are being honest and trusting them. And again, if you watch those episodes of Survivor, you've got these people that you think are in control, and they're thinking, oh, hey, we like him. And many times the low-power people are together, and they're trying to they have a plan to get rid of that high power or the mouthy person. In such situations, high-power people may withhold reward and use threats or coercion. The reaction usually intensifies the conflict between the two sides. So if the high power people realize the low power people really don't like them, then they might then result to being coercive and using that threats, the rewarding consequences. When threatened, high power people try to maintain their power by insisting rules or norms that legitimize the power and make it illegal to change the status quo. For example, after the South lost the Civil War, the white power structure in the South sought to maintain its power by keeping schools, restaurants, and things still segregated. Okay, I think about the election now, and again, not picking sides, but of course there's the high power of the Republican Party that believes, no matter what the local power says, that the high power won the election. So then there are still people that were in high power that are still trying to hold on to those ways. Numerous states and laws were enacted to legitimize this segregation. So while the high power people lost, the high power people didn't get their way, they still found ways to legitimize their belief system. Sounds a lot like US politics these days. High power people may also maintain their position by creating severe penalties for attempting to change the status quo. Again, blacks in the South were lynched for offenses and seeking to be served in white restaurants, right? So they were lynched. The consequences were huge because the high power people didn't want to let go of the power. Low power people, how do low power people relate to high power people? A couple of strategies. One is to emphasize and exaggerate the degree to which the high power people like them, estimating their goodwill. So the low power people can sometimes say, "Oh, look, I think you're great. I'm giving you the honor that I think you deserve. I'm trying to get a relationship with you. Maybe true, maybe not true." The second strategy is for them to become apathetic and submissive. Like, okay, whatever you say, I'll do. Right? The third power is to become angry, resentful, and rebel. Okay, so the lower power are people, there's three things they can do. They can become apathetic, which means no, I don't have any, it doesn't matter anymore, submissive. They can fight, or they can, the first choice, of course, was then to pretend to be on their side. Perhaps the best authority on power confrontation techniques is Sal Alinsky. So in the social work test, when it talks about community and the importance of group, you'll find Sal Alinsky was a huge deal. He and his associates organized many citizens groups to confront the established power. For example, in 1960, Alinsky was working with citizen group known as the Woodlawn Organization for the Inner City Change of Chicago. City authorities had made commitment to the organization and improved several conditions in the neighborhood. When it became clear that the commitment would not be honored, right, the high power people told the low power people they were going to do something, and they didn't. The Woodland organization sought to pressure the city into making its commitments, though the proposed solution was to embarrass city officials by tying up all the laboratories. Those are the bathrooms. On one of the busiest days, Alinsky described the effort as the following. So the high power group had made these promises, right? And the low power group didn't follow through. So the low power group decided to use some social action to make some changes. So this was called the shit-in. I'm just reading the text, right? So intelligence studies where you learn to how many sit-down toilets for both men and women, as well as stand-up urinals, that were the entire O'Hare Airport. So this is where they did this. Is the Chicago Airport at O'Hare. The consequence of this action would be catastrophic for many ways. People would be desperate for a place to go to the bathroom. One might see children yelling at their parents, "Mommy, Mama, you have to go." And desperate parents saying, "All right, well, do it here." O'Hare would soon become shambles. The whole scene was unbelievable, and the laughter and the ridicule was nationwide. It probably got a front page story in the London Times. Again, this is in Chicago in the 60s. It was a great source of notification and embarrassment for the city administration. It even creates a kind of emergency that planes would have to, it might even create the kind of emergency in which planes would have to be held up for passengers to get back aboard to use the plane's facilities. Okay, so this tactic was called the shit-in as opposed to the sit-ins, but it really was where you were challenging the high-power people. Okay. This tactic was leaked back to the administration, and within 48 hours, the Woodland Lawn organization found it in conference with the authorities, and they were certainly going to live up to their commitment. Okay, so they used that low power to influence the high power. That's a community organization question also when you take that licensure test in the future, knowing who Sal was and what he did specifically in that example. So leadership, having a co-leader. The groups work well with the co-leader as long as you're on the same theoretical orientation. What that means, as long as we're teaching the same kind of things, right? So if I am a Freudian, or if I am I teach from a behavior point of view, those are my theoretical orientations, it's not going to work in group setting. But having a co-leader, and especially a male-female co-leader, sometimes works really well. Virginia Satir called that conjoint, having both the male and the female together run the group. So co-leadership has its advantages and its disadvantages. The advantages would be first, the co-leader can help others in the task. Between meeting, the co-leaders can meet and discuss what went well. An effective co-leader is paired with an experienced leader. They can really be effective in teaching somebody, right? So co-leadership, again, it's got its pros and its cons. In a well-established group, the group leaders can actually disagree with each other, right? So if we're talking about how to parent a kid, or who I voted for, a co-leader can actually have a civilized, grown-up conversation, and when that happens, you're modeling for the group what you would like for it to look like when they disagree. The disadvantages, there are few potential drawbacks to co-leadership. Leadership of the group may be financially more expensive, perhaps twice as expensive, right? If you're paying a group leader, now there are two of them, I got to pay both of them. That can be financially, but can be a problem. Conflict and tension, okay? And it can happen to the detriment, especially if it's in the early stages of group and the group members can pick up the conflict, they can pick up the uncomfortableness between the two leaders. So the guidelines for forming and leading a group, that's where we're going. That's where we're going next, okay? The first meeting is always a good time to clarify the group's roles. What are we going to do first? How many members are expected? What are the characteristics, the age? Do they have the knowledge of the members? That's called pre-screening, and a lot of our group theorists really believed in pre-screening. However, not all groups, that's not possible with all groups, right? If you finish reading the literature, or if you're studying for your test, you know that the Cohen and probably the other guy, pre-affiliation, right? That Boston model. They believed in getting people together, screening prior to the group. However, in the real world, that is not always an option. You kind of get what you get. What are the likely personal goals for the members? How members are motivated, and what values members are likely to have. Okay, so those are the things that I would like to get to know before we actually start the group. In planning a meeting, it's helpful for a leader to visualize how the meeting will go. For example, a leader may want to visualize the following first meeting, right? In my head before it gets started, right? This is what I'm thinking. The members will arrive at various times. I'll be there to greet them, introduce myself, assist them in feeling comfortable, immerse in small talk. Possible topics are blank and blank and blank. I'll begin the meeting with introducing myself and the overall purpose of the group. I'll do an icebreaker. An icebreaker is something that just kind of breaks the tension, right? So usually something benign, something comfortable. If you've been in my class before, I'll say, start with your best and your worst, your roses and your thorns. It doesn't have to be all that serious. It could be you're broken down. It could be that, you found an old tie you're looking for. So those are kind of just easy ways to break the tension, to get the group started. It also does the rounding approach where everyone gets to say something, okay? And then you're going to talk about the group atmosphere, the whole plan of what it's going to look like in your head when you're running that group, okay? So the standards, and these of course are the NASW standards. The counseling standards are pretty much the same when it comes to group, okay? So of course, core value and knowledge. The group worker should understand the history of group work and know how it works, knowing that group members don't come to group knowing each other. In the beginning, they're not sharing a lot because they don't trust anybody. Respect for a person's dignity and autonomy, right? People have the right to self-determination. Now, I have said, especially if they're those task groups and they're court ordered, I have said to people, you have to say something. Because many times in those task groups, those court order groups, you'll get people that will not want to say anything. So at least the check-in part or the best and worst, you really do have to participate in that. In the beginning of the group, it also helps set that power where you don't have those low power people who haven't said anything ever. Okay, so I don't want my high power people taking over. I want to make sure that I've included those low power people in that group process. Okay, core knowledge, the special area of knowledge that enables group workers to be able to serve the group. So I've said before, I ran a group with drug and alcohol users. I've got to have knowledge. I've got to know what to look for. I need to know that if my drug user or former drug user is moving his mouth, that maybe he's lying, right? So you've got to know the population that you're working with. That's your knowledge. Okay. Again, those stages: pre-group, planning, recruitment, and new group formation. So those are called many different things as we talk about the different theorists, but it really is those are the processes of how I'm going to run a group. Okay. Strengths-based leaders. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
In an instance where, it's one of the groups that is court ordered or so, when they're in the group, do you feel like, they're just in there because they have to be, or do they eventually, start to get something from the group?
So a good group, I usually find I'm usually able to allow the process to happen. So they'll come in and they will not say anything. They hate me, they hate the world, they hate everything. So that's that beginning stages. But usually as we go along, and I do make them participate. So they can say 1 or 2 words, but they have to participate. But 9 times out of 10, as you're going through the process, they begin to let their guard down and really share some things.
Okay.
Okay, but it's a process. And with court-ordered people, you really have to be less of a power role. So
Gotcha.
yes, you're in my group, and yes, if you don't participate, I definitely can. We can look at having you sent back to jail. So I'm trying to be more of that servant leader,
Hmm.
right? Working with them, trying to understand, because what I want is that cohesion to happen.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
good question. In the strengths-based leadership, the strengths perspective is how we should all practice. Looking at the good, the strength in people. So, especially as you work with clients, and I know that you will all love all of your clients, but there have been some clients that I just didn't like. I just didn't like. So, learning to find their strength makes it very doable. So, but wow, she's done this, she's done that. And a particular story is I had a mom who had she had 4 boys under the age of 6. Mom got her nails done. Mom took care of mom. I walked in one day, I was doing a home visit, and I think he was 6, the 6-year-old was standing on top of the stove boiling a hot dog. Okay, now how dangerous that is. And the more I worked with her, the more she seemed oblivious to anything the children might need. Getting to know her, and I'm trying here. I'm really trying here. She would stop and get like something for her to eat, and then feed the kids like PB&J. And as my heart's like, oh, no, mother, whoa, it was hard for me. Getting to know her though, realizing that her own mother was schizophrenic, that she really had never been parented, and schizophrenics have that flat affect. So that whole mood of being able to be warm and caring, she had never learned. So it helped me get to like her, to understand her, by seeing the strengths perspective. Okay. In the text strength-based leadership, the findings demonstrate that leaders get more out of the work if they emphasize the worker should focus on doing what they have already. Try that again. That I'll do better in the group. My members will do better if I focus on what they've already done, what they're good at. Oh my gosh, you showed up today, right? We all like that warm fuzzy. We all like being acknowledged for what we've done. So if Johnny is late at group 7 out of 10, so instead of saying something the 7th time, when it comes to group this time, okay, you made it to group okay, right? Or you made it to group on time. So we all like that little bit of praise, that little bit of acknowledgement that I'm a human, that I'm a person. So strength-based really is looking for the strength they have. Johnny didn't have a car and he made it to group each week. Okay. When followers are asked what qualities that they admire in a leader, what they said was trust building, showing compassion, creating hope for success, making things happen by turning thoughts into actions, being adaptable, having the ability of all the factors that might affect the situation, having good organizational skills, being ethical, having a presence that they can take control over the group. Okay. So all of those things are things that make a good leader heard from the people who were in the group. Okay. So all of those leadership skills are important, and whether that is, again, an actual therapeutic group, whether it's a social group, whether it's you're on the jury, right? Whether you're, in your survivor stuck on an island, those are the leadership skills that people find to be most effective. Given this laundry list of desired qualities of a leader, it's clear that no one can possibly have all those qualities. Leaders need to identify their own strengths, what I'm good at, right? And amplify those strengths. Also get the right people on your team. One of the things that I'm very aware of are my shortcomings, things that I am just not good at, right? So when you're building a team, we're going to try to build a team of people that can come in and do what I can't do. That also gives that shared leadership, right? So you're going from that high power to that shared power. Okay. Again, summarizing, those are the things we kind of went over today in the setting. Okay, so this is chapter 3. So again, let's go back. That's the group exercise. Of course, we're not doing that because we don't have the face-to-face and group time. The notes of what you should have learned today. Those are the key terms that we went over today. Okay, let's go back to that. Okay, so again, this is my groups class. We're on week 3. So I did lecture on the group dynamics and leadership. Of course, there is a study quiz right there. Don't forget to go back and do your study quiz. And if at home you're having difficulty with Cengage loading, it does take a minute just sometimes. A lot of people are using it. It's on the cloud somewhere. Okay, so you're going to do your assignment. Okay, so there are, I think there's usually 10 quizzes and questions on that. Yeah, 1 through 10. Remember, you're graded on those. That goes directly in the grade book. Okay. Your case study of Quentin. Again, for those of you that are in my classroom, you'll see that we are going to the Cengage products. I did say, I think in another video, that we will be using these in the future, so I do suggest that you go ahead and kind of get used to it. Okay, this is your case study about Quentin. Okay. And then your reflection is the follow-up from the first activity. Your first activity, again, your first activity is the discussion post. So you're starting on, chapter 3. And then, of course, the last one is reflecting on what you learned this semester, learned in what you learned during this lecture, as well as your own reading.